Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Dying Time is here. That's right, we're talking Wes Craven's New Nightmare on Kill by Kill. Well, greetings and salutations, Internet. It's your old pal, Patrick Hamilton, coming to you once again from 1428 Elm Street via Tarzana. This is the Kill by Kill podcast where we are dedicated to celebrating the least discussed component of any horror film, the characters. We're going to unpack all the gory details of Wes Craven's New Nightmare in the hopes that a unfortunate au pair's death is not just the beginning of the jokes that we can make at their expense. I was struggling to think about who was killed in this movie for a second. And as always, there's only one person I trust that when I call her to tell her, hey, Bob Shea wants to meet, I think you're going to like what he has to say. She's going to take that meeting. The one, the only, Gina Radcliffe. How are you doing today, Gina?
Happy New Year, Patrick. Just pretend I'm throwing confetti at you, and I've got one of those like little party blower paper thingies.
Yes.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. And it's started so well in so many respects around the world.
Absolutely. Just off to a cracking good start. The future has never been brighter.
just when you think that the smoke gets in your eyes, it turns out it's from half a world away and no one's bothering to put it out. Yeah, it's super fun. But you know what? What is good? Wes Craven's New Nightmare, Gina.
It is. I have not seen this movie in about 25 years. and it is like a nice cup of cold water after a hot day, after a soothing warm shower, after a pulled muscle. When you compare this to Freddy's Dead, it's like a warm bath. It's just so soothing. It's a balm to the soul. It's just so well done.
It's so delightfully competent. It's so amazingly effective. It's wonderfully shot and executed in almost every shape and form.
It's got a Freddy that's actually kind of scary.
Yeah.
And is what I would think of as a dead, mutilated, child molesting murderer.
Yes, he's an entity. He's an idea. He's a whole lot of shit. But you know what? We're going to get into it, Gina, but I don't want to disturb you right now, but we are not alone. That's right. We have a special guest. Our guest this week is a writer for birthdeathmovies.com, and of course can be read in book form in the Horror Movie a Day, which is still available on Amazon.com. I have it right here on my desk in front of me, and he is a Kill by Kill all-star. The one, the only, the trivia champion, reigning supreme, Brian Collins. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm all right. How you doing?
I'm okay.
We like enthusiasm in our guests. That's great. We're pumped. We're so ready to go.
We're just really enthused. We're not talking about Freddy's Dead anymore.
Yes.
I would have declined an offer for that one, I think.
There's only so many things you'll do for the art that you love. So, Brian, I reached out to you. I think you just happened to be watching it, or maybe you were just waxing philosophic about New Nightmare. And I said, oh my God, do you want to continue this conversation when we eventually reach it?
It was probably me reacting for the millionth time to some annoying person saying that, you know, it's Wes doing the same thing he'd do in Scream, because they're not the same thing at all.
No.
The closest, I mean, yes, they both exist in a world where horror movies exist. That's about their only real connection. Oh, and W. Earl Brown is in them. Other than that, it's very, very different beasts, I think. Different subgenre, different everything. I've never quite gotten the, New Nightmare is fine, but it's really just a warm up for what he'd perfect in Scream. Like, he didn't do anything like that in Scream. I think Scream 3 was closer to what they're doing in New Nightmare, and Scream 3 is terrible. So So whenever I see that, I bristle. It's one of those things that always drives me nuts, because it seems like it's said by somebody that didn't understand one or both of the movies they were watching.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, I think they're both, we'll get into it as we go, but well, why not start here? I think they're both meditations from a person who might be slightly regretting the direction of his career, because his Universal run has some really interesting movies. They're full of big ideas, and I think their quality may vary here and there to the individual person's taste level. But you can't say that People Under the Stairs or The Serpent in the Rainbow or Shocker lack for ideas. But I also feel, as a person who was a philosophy major, there's something about him approaching Nightmare again where he's regretting some things, or at least putting his participation in the horror sphere under a microscope. And this is the result from that.
I would agree with that. One thing that I had forgotten about this movie that I particularly enjoyed, and he didn't go into it too much, but enough that it was there, is, you know, if you're wondering what Wes Craven thought about Freddy Krueger becoming a sort of bizarre pop culture icon where there were action figures made of him and a hotline geared towards, you know, teens to call him, it turns out he didn't think very highly of it. You know, one of my favorite scenes is when Heather Langenkamp, who was playing herself, which is one of the interesting parts of the movie. Well, it's the thrust of the movie. She's on a talk show, and they bring Freddy out, and you got people in the audience dressed like him, and you know, and this is, you know, pre-internet, you know, kind of digging at, you know, fan culture. Yeah. And how weird it was that, you know, the audience decided to, this is our guy. The child murderer is our guy.
Yeah, it's a really interesting movie from a meta standpoint. And I agree with you, Brian. I think Scream looks at a genre, particularly the slasher movie, in a meta sense. And it's also from a different writer's point of view. And Wes is just putting it on screen and imbuing it with all the tension and drama that he can bring to bear.
Yeah.
Whereas here, this is him really reflecting on, are the ideas that I put out into the world good or bad? Can even bad ideas have a positive? Can something that I think is a positive have negative ramifications? And then what does that do to the other people who participate in this with me?
I didn't remember the whole, you know, he's writing the script as he goes along, which I thought was kind of cool. Didn't always make a lot of sense, and I think it's, you know, it's one of those things where if you think about it too much, it's not really going to hold as much water as you would like it to. But I do find that, you know, he is in control of everything.
Yeah.
And you know, he's kind of treating his actors like you know, pawns in a chess game. And it's, you know, it's kind of a little, you know, it's an interesting sort of, you know, take on how he feels about what he does, about filmmaking in general. It's you know, it's very fascinating in that regard.
One of the ongoing themes, I think, of the movie is, have I ruined Heather Langenkamp's life? Because, you know, she, obviously this might be the most iconic thing that she ever did. She had a pretty good run on television as well.
Yeah,
and weirdly
but,
enough,
ended
up with a stalker as a result of the TV show.
I think that the movie does acknowledge that that's what she is known for.
Yeah. And it makes it treats her like a human being. Like, if this is the one thing that you're known for, how does that genuinely affect your life? How do other people look at you as the result of that? And it treats her rather fairly in the standpoint that she gets to voice frustration with it. She's very in control of herself, even if she's not in control of the circumstances that surround her. But it also puts her through the fucking ringer. Like, Craven, in short order, kills her husband, has the state declare that she's unfit to parent a child. Kills her nanny. There's a lot that just
that's all that is true, but her hair looks better than ever.
Oh fuck. All deference to her.
She's got a little Rita Hayworth soft curl thing going on. I'm just like,
Let me tell you something. No matter how poorly her wardrobe was treated in the first movie, and some might say the third movie, Heather Langenkamp has never looked better than she does in this movie. Her eyes pop in absolutely every scene, and her hair remains one of the greatest manes ever captured on film at 24 frames per second.
It's spectacular. And when she gets the gray streak again, it looks even better.
I think we're coming up to 90s standard production values when it comes to both her hair and makeup and wardrobe. Brian, what was the first time you saw Wes Craven's New Nightmare?
Opening weekend. I got to go see it in theaters. So I was 14. The old, mom drops me off, dad picks me up, or vice versa, whatever it was. It was the second of the movies I got to see in theaters. I also got to see Freddy's Dead, which was not the best experience. Of course, when I was 11, I probably liked it a little more than I did, in later years.
Right.
But, and it was funny too, because the crowd, I'm going to talk about this because I was on before about Jason Goes to Hell. We always had packed crowds for horror stuff there, regardless of what the film would end up doing on opening weekend. The opening crowd there was always jam-packed. And so it was always kind of interesting to read the box office in Entertainment Weekly or USA Today, or wherever I'd read it back then, for the internet, because if you were to base it on my screenings, it would seem like every horror movie was a whopping success, and there were I do remember there was a guy dressed as Freddy, kind of chasing one of his friends around up and down the aisle while we waited, which is, in a muted way and obviously smaller scale. It was basically like what, he'd do at the beginning of Scream 2 with the stab premiere, with people running around dressed up and stuff.
Sure.
Which always, as soon as I saw Scream 2, I was like, oh, that's basically what, but then, the movie flopped, basically. I mean, it's the lowest grossing entry in the series. And, you wouldn't have known it. You wouldn't have known it from the crowd at Showcase Cinemas Lawrence in Massachusetts, for anybody that, any of your Massachusetts listeners may know that one.
Yeah, the lowest rated thing is interesting, though not surprising. I mean, I'm thinking about how, when Uncut Gems came out, it got a very low cinema score because people thought they were going to get a funny Adam Sandler movie, and not an Adam Sandler movie where he's having a constant nervous breakdown from beginning to end. And I'm sure people went to this and they were like, well, that's not the Freddy we want. And then, they told two friends and they told two friends and so on and so on and so on.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't think in my memory, they didn't hide the premise. I remember knowing that, Wes Craven's in it as himself,
Yeah.
I mean, him yelling, "Cut the effects," is in every trailer and TV spot ever. So it's always curious to me when people get those cinema scores. It's like, what movie did you show up for? Did you not watch a trailer or read a synopsis or anything? You went in totally blind just because of something?
I think a lot of people do that. I think people are like, yeah, another Freddy movie. No, that's not the Freddy we want.
I think it's the low information voter syndrome. And that low information viewer crosses all sorts of genres. And we come across it all the time online, where someone decides out of nowhere to declare that, the last decade was kind of terrible for horror, and you look in amazement like, what the fuck are you talking about? There has not been a fertile as a time for horror as the last decade since the 1980s. So I think there's a certain amount of horror fan who only views the type of product they want through one lens. And if it doesn't hit that, then it's somehow a disappointment. It's not what they're looking for. And it's kind of weird in a genre that can do so many things. And in this circumstance, it's this metatextual look at, is making a horror movie a good thing or a bad thing? Is catching evil on screen a net positive, even though there are net minuses? It's an I know this is very philosophical for Kill by Kill. We're usually making fun of background details, and we will get to that. But the movie is way deeper, but it also has plenty of visceral thrills and lingering dread. The amount that it bounces off the original and the franchise in general is pretty astounding. Like, it's a really good companion to the Nightmare on Elm Street series.
Yeah, I agree. It's it's a thoughtful, introspective movie in the series. I don't know that any of the other ones were really that.
I think they're unintentionally thoughtful, or at least they're dipping their toes into grander ideas than just another Freddy Krueger movie. And then they eventually just became another Freddy Krueger movie. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But here it is having grander aspirations. And there's a lot of things to it that I guess would just, it's not the, here's another high schooler who's dealing with a dream demon, as we all do in our high school years. Here is a working actress who's reaching a plateau in her career. She's, got a house in Tarzana with fruit painted in her kitchen. Okay, fine.
Her son unfortunately suffers from this same tragic affliction as the little boy in the Babadook, which is, I believe the scientific term is screaming creepy childitis.
I mean, can we talk about Miko Hughes for a second? He is obviously iconic from Pet Sematary, but here he's grown a couple of years. But I really don't want to focus on people's bodies because it's weird. It's something that I can't control. But his body proportions here are astounding. People talk about needing to be a lollipop head in this business. His head is about 3/4 of his torso.
Oh, he's a pop doll. He's a human pop doll.
It's crazy. His proportions.
He's a tiny little delicate boy, and I just wanted to protect him so much. And his little jammies, and he's probably like 12 when he made this movie.
Oh, God only knows.
And he's just like toddling across the highway in his little jammies. I'm like, no, you're not supposed to be on the highway again.
I think
this
it puts
time the truck misses.
It weirdly puts it into again this sort of meta circumstance where I feel the same way about this movie that I do about the first and second Child's Play, where you have a kid who's so tiny, who's really a child on screen. And he doesn't seem to be an adult in a child's body. He doesn't have that sort of Jerry Maguire syndrome, which weirdly enough came out around the same time. I think I saw it in the same theater as that, where it feels like a lot of adult is being put into this kid. He just seems like a kid. This movie is a cavalcade of terrible looking 90s phone tech. The bricks people hold in their hands, the desktop phones just seem gargantuan, like the size of my laptop. It's crazy how big people's phone tech is in this movie.
And no one has, like, there's no major cell problems though either. Like, they have cell phones and they just use them, even though it's 94 and that was a relatively new thing. And it's a rare horror movie that never has the cell phone problem, even though back then it probably would have.
Yes. Well, I think it's such a crazy psychological and supernatural sphere. It's not like you can call the cops and like, hey, the idea of Freddy Krueger is haunting my house and my child. Please dispatch someone.
Yeah.
So it's not like, phoning someone is going to make it better for you. The other thing this movie has in droves is creepy limo drivers. And
oh, yeah.
I love a good creepy limo driver, especially in an LA movie.
There's nothing I love more, and I mean, my favorite use of it is a Spinal Tap, when the driver is just babbling away to the person, and the person just kind of puts that little window up. That's like, I just love that so much.
I don't want to burst their bubble, but this rock and roll thing, it's just not going to last.
Well, you've loved and lost like Frank has.
You've loved and lost like Frank has. Oh, sweet Jesus. Please forgive me while I laugh for 5 minutes at the very idea of this Spinal Tap. Oh my God. The size of the fake plants on this TV set show that they're doing with KTLA's Sam, what the fuck is his name? He's not on TV anymore, I don't think. But this was the height of his powers, and they seem to
the guy interviewing her?
Yeah.
He was a guy playing himself, like a real.
Yeah. He was the entertainment reporter on KTLA for ever.
Before my time in LA.
Yeah, until like a biscuit ago.
Was that like a weird thing at New Line at the time? Because Jason Goes to Hell had those other LA guys, the DJs.
You know, I think that there is an advantage and a disadvantage to how closed the loop New Line cinema was. We talked about this a bit with Freddy's Dead. And weirdly enough, hearkening back to the last time you were on the show with Jason Goes to Hell, both movies have a sequence in which you go around a serial killer's brain. So somewhere at New Line, they were really into this idea of like, we're going to go inside the brain of Freddy Krueger. Or no, but we're going to go inside the brain of Jason Voorhees. It's like, I don't know that that's all that wacky, crazy, cool an idea, but okay. And I think because it was a truly independent at the time sort of thing, there was a closed loop system. If they had an idea in their head of like, well, the best way to refract what society is thinking is a talk show, they just keep pushing that idea, regardless of what the property is. And, you know, that's what we get to see. And during it, what the weirdest thing is to me is that Freddy goes, "You're all my children now," which is from part 2, Freddy's Revenge.
Yeah.
So that's either an acknowledgement of Freddy's Revenge or a dig at Freddy's Revenge. And I'm not particularly sure which one it is.
Yeah, because I remember Wes saying, obviously he didn't rush out and see any of the sequels, and then he tried to, he watched them only when he got this gig. So I'm like, I wonder if there was ever a point where they were like, throw in more references to the others, and he was just like, yeah, no, I'm not gonna be doing that at all. Thank you. But I do. There's one thing I absolutely love. I don't know if it's supposed to be a meta joke. If it is, it's possibly the best one of all time. Is that Tuesday night is at the funeral, and Tuesday night was, what's her name, Patricia Arquette's replacement.
So is Rod's there too.
So it's like, okay, Patricia Arquette probably became friendly with Heather Langenkamp and may show up to her husband's funeral to show her respects. Why would Tuesday night do that unless Tuesday night is actually playing Patricia Arquette in that scene? Which, if that was the intent, it is genius, and I applaud the thinking behind that.
I'm all for that intention, very much so. I mean, the Hollywood-esqueness, I think it's a weird time. I can't remember exactly when The Player came out. If it was before...
It was 92?
92. So it is before this. So there is a lot of the player-ness happening in this as well.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no need for Sarah Risher to play herself. Like, who is, we might know Bob Shea at that point, obviously Wes and the actors, but you have Sarah Risher and one of the other New Line execs playing themselves, and it's just like, do we really need, like, they could have just gotten a real actress to show up. There's no one in the crowd that's going to be like, yeah, strange.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And I'm sure there are people that are probably like, Oh, that's funny. The guy that showed up in 3 of the other movies is showing up again. Now he's playing the head of the movie studio without, because they don't read credits and they don't pay attention enough to know that what his name is and who he is. They just might recognize him as the leather bar, bartender from 2,
Or the ticket taker and Freddy's dad,
yeah,
or the teacher in part 4. Again, this is the best that Bob Shea has ever been in any Nightmare on Elm Street movie, which is saying something, because I think he's in, at least from a voice standpoint, each and every single one of them.
He's very much a hey booby, how you doing kind of mode here.
But he's also the most Neil Breen he's ever been.
He does look like Neil Breen, doesn't he?
It's crazy how much he looks like Neil Breen.
Right? And I was like, I looked at Neil Breen.
I mean, if he wore a denim jacket and started killing people with mind powers and threw a laptop and said no more books, I would believe it. I would believe it if he started eating out of tuna cans and hacking the world from the 4 laptops in the trunk of his car. God, I love Neil Breen. He's the best. Fucking Neil Breen. Give it up. I mean, these are the old, I think the old New Line was on Robertson before they got folded into the Warner Brothers fold. And it was a crazy concrete building. But I mean, it's such a weird flashback to a time. And yet there are so many things about it that ring absolutely true. Like, as soon as you walk into an office, someone behind a desk, you said, I'm here to see you. And the person says, were they expecting you? No, I drove all the way fucking across town to Robertson because I thought Bob Shea might want to see me. What the fuck are you doing? What are you talking about? Why did I show up here?
I came from Tarzana, damn it. You think I'd drive down all the way at 4 or 5 over here to get...
Yeah, there's no fucking way that I drove all the way across to the west side for this shit unless I have a meeting. Unless I'm coming here. It's not like Warner Brothers where I can just cross a freeway and I can go to Bob's Big Boy if I strike out. No. Like, this is a fucking haul. That is LA Talk here on Kill by Kill podcast.
I'm just sitting here like, I'm take you guys' word for it.
I love every back lot scene in a movie.
The jugglers, I was like, yep, there they are.
Yeah.
So the people with the costumes, the big dolly of not dolly, but the big the movable rack of costumes. They're all
yes.
Yeah, it's you got that bingo card, that backlot bingo card where there's like somebody dressed like a Civil War soldier uniform. Yeah, just everything's there.
There's a great part in that backlot scene too. She's with Robert. She's waiting for him. She's like, Robert, we got to go. Then he instantly walks the opposite direction. After they talk for about 5 seconds. But I don't know if I've never noticed it before because I just revisited the movie. It's probably the first time I watched it on Blu-ray. Robert committed, man. You see him walk all the way, like at least a good 100 yards. Like he's still walking back there. I'm like, they didn't just tell Robert he could just take a left or something so the poor guy could sit down? What was Robert thinking while he just endlessly walked down this long, alley between the 2 studio buildings?
Yeah. Everything about this has a ring of truth to it. And I think that the verisimilitude of it all imbues the movie with a realness and a reality to it that when things start to break down and they go crazy, and they eventually do, it feels right. It doesn't feel like it's an add-on. It's not a layer onto something else. It really feels like, hey, the earth started rumbling. Reality started cracking. People are going insane. Am I going insane, or insane things happening to me? And that's what this movie does really well. It is Wes Craven really working on all cylinders.
One thing I noticed, obviously, again, I saw this when I was 14, so I didn't. Some of it went over my head, but I noticed probably in college or whenever I revisited that the only people that die in the movie are the people that are not playing themselves.
Right.
They only kill off fictional people, and anybody that's actually playing themselves in the movie is left alive, which I thought was interesting. I didn't know if that was intent, or if that was one of his ideas. These things can't really harm the real people or something.
Are we supposed to? I don't know if this was a dropped plot thread or what are we supposed to assume happened to Robert Englund?
Yeah, that and the John Saxon thing, they don't really make sense. I don't understand why Saxon all of a sudden becomes Thompson again.
Yeah, out
of nowhere, because it doesn't really follow up with it. He just he starts calling her Nancy. He's dressed as Thompson. He just leaves. Right, and then England is like, oh, I won't be in
He's
town.
Clearly, dealing with this too. Are we supposed to? Is he kind of turning into Freddy?
Because I do wonder if he's. I mean, there are multiple interpretations you could take to it. He is either transforming against his will into Freddy, and the end of this movie is an exorcism, as it were, of that, because he can't help it. Just the same way John Saxon can't help becoming Nancy's dad, which is, man, as soon as John fucking Saxon enters this movie, it also kicks into another level. This is a great John Saxon role, just being John Saxon, telling Sonny Bono stories. If there's anyone who's going to tell an entertaining Sonny Bono story, it's John Saxon. I do wonder that it's either to clear him off the table, or to set up, well, is it still, is he turning into Freddy Krueger? The last we see him, he's painting and can't finish a conversation, which seems like the most Robert Englund thing in the entire world. Like, I'm sorry, I'm painting right now. I can't have this phone conversation.
And if you've ever interviewed or know Robert, you know that there's nothing more unsettling than a Robert Englund who is unable to speak. So it adds a layer of creepiness to it. I mean, it's certainly an interesting, and it is kind of a creepy, unsettling. It just doesn't. There's no follow through on it, and it's not explained. But I think that is something that, I don't know if plagued is the right word, but throughout Wes's career, the films that he wrote himself, there are always things that don't quite make sense. They're just a little too brainy to translate to the screen, especially, when you're dealing with, this has to be, in this particular film's case, an expectations of, for better or worse, A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 7. There might not be time to slow down and explain these things thoroughly. I chalk that up to him being a psychology and philosophy major.
Yeah.
Maybe I always wished that he had a writing partner, that would, you'd see their name alongside his more often than not in the writing credits, because I think he always had a lot of great ideas that weren't fully coming across, and this is definitely one of those cases where I'm sure there is a very cool, very logical explanation for those things. It's just not there, and I don't think it was edited out or something. I think it's just not, it's just not something that makes sense on screen. It's probably just a little too cerebral to really come across,
and it's not necessarily the story he's focusing on telling.
No, that's the thing. It's a subplot at best. It's a strange that's left dangling. I mean, the movie is start to finish from Heather's point of view. So I remember somebody was like, "I'm really mad. I just wanted to see a scene where Freddy was attacking Robert Englund." I'm like, okay, first of all, the effects in this movie suck. So the fact that you'd want to see that is just its own thing. But it's like, that would be corny. Like it wouldn't fit, I don't think, in any way. They don't even show you the other two effects guys. We just find out they're dead on a news report, and that's that. This movie is not about showing kills, and it's not about everybody. There's a little bit to hint that Heather's not the only target, but it still is very much Heather's movie from start to finish. Bob doesn't want to answer his phone, and Sarah Risher. I think I forget. I might be remembering stuff from the novelization too, which I read and I don't have anymore. I was trying to find it. I don't know what happened to it, but I think there was stuff with her, with Sarah Risher's character, that she wasn't sleeping well or something. I don't remember if it was in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing that's not in the movie that I remember hearing was a major component of it that eventually just got erased was the idea of Julie being the actual stalker
Okay.
of Nancy.
Oh, the one sending her the letters before all this stuff. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's another subplot that never really.
It doesn't come, and it's okay that it doesn't. It just, there's this concentric circle, this spiral that's going around Heather, right?
Did they catch her stalker in real life?
That's a really good question that I don't have the answer to. I really don't, and I wouldn't pretend to. And we're talking about a time where it wasn't taken anywhere close to as serious as it is now, and I can't say it's taken all that serious currently, considering how many people I hear about with such problems. And we've even run into it here, just a skosh, just a blip of it.
And it's interesting. I've had the three most prominent stalker actresses have been stalked. They've had a problem with that sort of thing. I've had all of them in the past year or so at screenings. And every time I'm always just like, I can't believe they actually come out and do these things, which is awesome. Yeah. Because we don't screen every person that comes in, we don't know if one of these people in the crowd is one of the, the people they've had a problem with in the past. But her, Danielle Harris, and Adrienne King have all had, issues with that. And, it has affected how much they work and how much they do and stuff. So,
and it's just interesting to, like I said, this is all pre-internet, and I would love to see something like this, in terms of, how fandom has changed, and let's say largely for the worse, thanks to the internet, and because now you have enablers, and stalkers very rarely just might work on their own. They're no longer just skulking around sending letters to people's houses. Now they're getting their little, teams online to just kind of harass and wear down people. And it's, it's funny to watch, it was kind of a little bit, what's sort of thinking of when you see something coming, with how, the fans, keep thinking of her like her character, and the whole thing with, how, the people are treating Freddie like a rock star. And just, and how weird that is. And it's only gotten weirder.
Yeah. People have only been more encouraged to indulge their standom, as it were. There's a distance to being online and saying what you want to say, as opposed to in person. And it's never been easier to talk to somebody, and it's never been more difficult to connect. I do wish that, and it feels like something that the Scream franchise could capitalize on. But once again, I think the Scream franchise is left with a chasm that's going to be very difficult for it to leap over. And that is the disappearance of one Wes Craven. I mean, again, I didn't want this to be a multi-episode blowjob of the genius of Wes Craven, but we at least have to acknowledge it, and both of you have touched on it. The man was brimming with ideas and an amazing capacity for empathy, for dialing into what unnerves us and finding a way to translate that. And when he was at the top of his game, and the top of his game, didn't have one white hot center. It came back and came back and came back. I don't know how the Scream franchise would re-enter the fray without him in the director's chair, to be honest with you. It's a very interesting problem, but one I don't have an answer to. I just don't know where the next Wes Craven is coming from. There are certainly lots of talented people, who could make a great horror movie. I don't know that we have a lot of Wes Cravens running around, and I don't know how we possibly could.
Well, I think that we do, but they're going to be kind of sticking to the indie horror. I don't think you're going to, have the kind of, pull that he has, because most of his movies did pretty well in the box office, and the ones that didn't kind of garnered a cult following. Like there's, when you mentioned like The Serpent and the Rainbow, everybody's like, oh shit, like that's just a movie, you see it once, you do not forget it. And I think like the other night I watched the movie Bliss, which is written and directed by Joe Begos, and he seems to have, all of his movies, they are all very gory, but they all seem to, have like a different, kind of look and feel to them. He's using different genres. Like Bliss was a vampire movie. VFW, which he did almost back to back with Bliss, is like a kind of like a
siege picture.
Yeah, like an assault on Precinct 13. Only it's a bunch of grizzled old war veterans, which is kind of more. It was kind of more of a comedy horror, whereas Bliss was not funny in the slightest. And you can see that similar style, but he seems like someone who wants to try something a little different. But his movies are not yet getting widespread release.
I mean, I think it's weirdly it's a tough time because there are good horror movies that are getting wide releases. And there's still trash. There's always trash. There was trash in the 80s. There was trash in the 50s. There's always trash, man. Like, everyone comes up to the plate and they take a swing, and sometimes they're swinging for home runs, and sometimes they hit base singles. And sometimes they're just outright flops with everyone intending to do the best they possibly can. But we're also in a time where, It Chapter 2, both those movies were huge, giant releases. Crawl is a creature feature, but it was released in the summer. Like, Paramount didn't hide the fact that Crawl was in theaters. This is a time where a studio can make a stand with a horror movie that's, they feel they've, they're going to make some hay with. A24 does it all the time.
Yeah, but A24 is trying some weird shit. And it's they're not going for conventional horror, and that's why you get a lot of people saying that, because when people are who claim that it's a bad year of horror or a bad decade for horror, we know what they're talking about. They're talking about The Witch. They're talking about Hereditary. They're talking about Midsummer, the movies that most instigated the whole, well, this isn't really horror conversation, and that's the kind of thing that they're doing. And you have a lot of very, particularly, I hate to say people our age who are very much digging in and having very distinct idea what horror is, and that's someone chasing a bunch of people around the woods with a knife. And yeah, every once in a while you've got movies that are still coming out like that, but lo and behold, they're not very good. And they some of them choose, like I liked Ready or Not. That was a lot of fun, but I still think they were still trying something a little different with that.
Yeah, I don't know who, and I hope I'm surprised. To be honest with you, I enjoy the surprise of it, of thinking I might know what Ready or Not is and being surprised. I love the fact that I walked into Crawl thinking this could be fun and having a shit ton of fun in it. And it's a really fun and interesting time where there are all sorts of cool shit happening. And I feel like New Nightmare is really in there with a big idea and still delivering all sorts of things. Gore, dread. It's heavy in dread.
Oh, yeah.
That whole W. Earl Brown sequence. And has he ever looked more clean cut than he does in this movie? I was like, why do I know that voice? And what I like about it is it's self-aware. I mean, it obviously is self-aware, but it's not in a smug, winking sort of way at the audience. The problem with a lot of horror that tries to exist within its own universe is it feels like they're saying to the audience, "Yeah, we know this is garbage.
You know what I mean? And, you know, we're just going to have some fun with it. We're not trying to take this serious as an actual good movie or anything. That would be ridiculous. You know, but I think this one is, you're in the world of this movie being made. It's unfolding in front of you, but we are taking this seriously. And I think that is a difficult balance to maintain, and they do it well.
Yes. There are so many details about this movie that I absolutely love. There's that one sequence in which you slowly push into the bedroom and everything in Heather's bedroom is rocking like it's all on water. And it's very subtle. Like, I didn't notice it until this time watching the movie. I'm like, no, he's really trying to communicate the fact that she is unmoored, that she is alone. She is set adrift. She cannot communicate the circumstances that she has found herself in this life. And you can only understand it through her eyes. And yet there's also a sequence in this where we look at her living room and there's a fucking wood leopard in there. And I'm like, what the fuck is happening there? Who has a house like this? This is crazy. Why would you have that in the living room? When we go to the two other stars, when we go to Wes Craven's house, like that feels like some sort of dream empire because it doesn't seem real up until the point you go into his office and you see it just cluttered with fucking books and crazy shit all over the walls. You're like, no. That's Wes Craven. That's the professor.
Yeah, how often
the
did
guy
Wes
sitting
use
on
that
a couch in front of a long swimming pool? Yeah. I don't know who that is. That's someone else. That's Wes Craven going, here's who you think I am. Up until the point in which I reveal that all of our dialogue I've scripted. Like, oh, that's some fucking Wes Craven shit right there.
Yeah, this is the guy that was like facing homelessness when when the first Nightmare was, before it went into production. And it was interesting. It's only 10 years from the original Nightmare to this one, and yet it feels more like a movie that almost could have came now, or at least maybe 5-10 years ago, as opposed to within, I think, 3 years of the last sequel at that point. Like, it feels like a weird homecoming, and it's time to bring the band back together and stuff. It's like, it's only been a few years, guys. I mean, the 10-year span of this series, from the original Nightmare to New Nightmare, is as of April just as long as it's been since we've had a Nightmare movie at all, and that was the remake.
Yeah.
Regrettably.
Which is its own can of fish.
Yeah.
Smelly fish. I haven't even seen it. I have not even seen it, but I'm just dreading it in every possible way. Because I'll tell you, I've had this conversation with at least 3 different people. Are you guys going to do the remake? Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the one. I mean, every movie, every other Platinum Dunes, the Chainsaw, Friday, Amityville, they have, they're polarizing. There are people that really dig what they do, and there are people that hate them. I don't think I've ever spoken to anybody that's been a diehard champion of the Nightmare remake. I don't know if they exist. I'm sure there are some people who liked it, but I have never had that conversation the way I can have it with their other movies. Hell, even Hitcher, I can find. I liked their Hitcher. I can find other Hitcher fans. I can certainly find others that hate it. I cannot recall in 10 years now having a conversation with somebody that could defend and had a lot of warm thoughts for their Nightmare remake.
It's such a unlike all the others, even though that I feel like the Texas Chainsaw was such a success in not only financially, but it's just on its own merits. It just, for whatever reason, just kind of works. Does it work as well as the original? Of course not. How could it? That's lightning in a bottle. You can't reproduce that. You can only create your own thing out of those elements. And I think it does it with some aplomb. It's not life-changing, but I think it's a good swing at the bat. Friday has its moments. I don't like how Austin it feels. I don't like that it's 4 movies in one. I don't like that Jason has a subterranean basement made of concrete. I don't like that he has a jacket, but he's a great Jason. Like, that's a great Jason. There's plenty of good things about it that float its boat. But man, Nightmare, haven't seen it since the theater, and I am dreading it. Just dreading it.
I hope my best hope is that it does not drain us of the will to live like Jason X did.
Jason X, and not to revisit this, but could not have found us at a lower point. And I went into that with genuine good feelings about it. Like, I like the costumes. I think it's fun. It's breezy. And then it just dragged us into Canadian sci-fi hell.
Well, I think that the problem is when you do break them down like we do, then a lot of them don't hold up. And that's why, what I was saying about with the whole, he's writing the script as it happens, you can't think about it too long because it doesn't make a lot of sense. But it's such a clever idea on its own that it's still enjoyable.
Yeah. The fact that they're all his puppets and that he's responsible for the tragedies that are all befalling all these people that have agreed to work with him.
And he's just like, so it's a slightly, like, oh, Wes kind of ending,
I want like a post credit or something scene of either him or the mail courier waiting by Nancy's by Heather's house at the end of the film to deliver the script. And like, all right, just make sure, she should be fighting Freddy in this other realm now. And she'll climb out of the bed soon. We want her to find the script right then. So have it ready. Thanks. Okay, bye.
I want it to be like, God, I'm really dating myself here, but certain TV shows, I want to say the ones produced by Stephen J. Cannell in the 80s, like would end with a picture of him at his typewriter. And like he would pull the paper out and just go flying and then spell out his name. I just thought that was going to happen with like, Wes Craven, like right at the end credits.
Or a post-script scene, a post-credit scene with Bob Shea reading the script and being like, the fuck is this? No. Where are the kills? You killed 2 people in this. No. Thrown across the room. Go with Freddy versus Jason.
You want to run a kid across a fucking highway? Do you know how much that's going to cost? How are you going to do that?
Diane, get me Wes Craven.
Oh yeah, Wes, you're a special effects genius. Yeah, I'm gonna throw $2 million behind this rear projection gag. That's gonna work out great for everyone. Where are you gonna shut down a fucking freeway? Let's just talk about that rear projection gag. It's still fucking. There are certain effects in here. Some of the model work towards the end is a little janky, but for God love it, I love rear projection gags. Here, Terminator, Aliens,
Dream Warriors, the skeleton.
Yeah, rear projection shit just works for me. It feels. Listen, it doesn't look real, but it looks like a movie, and maybe that's my generational gap talking, but it feels real to me than something that is entirely digital. And here it just works like fucking gangbusters. I love everything about that sequence. And it should be noted, this is some of the best music in any of the Nightmare on Elm Street films. It is just as histrionic as it tends to get at times.
Yeah.
There is something to having a full fucking orchestra give you a real score to one of these movies already.
Yeah, there's a Christopher Youngish quality to some of it.
Yeah, and we don't have like, an Iggy Pop, B-side or, some, mediocre, hair metal band doing a song.
Yeah, the Fat Boys aren't making a guest spot. As much as I enjoy the Houdini song from Part 5, it has fuck all to do with Nightmare on Elm Street. I just like the funky drummer beat. But yeah, it's not talking down to the kids, as it were. This feels like an adult Nightmare on Elm Street movie. I'm sure that's how he sold it. Like, it's been a decade since that first film. all those kids are now kind of grown up. Maybe they've gone into college, maybe they're into the workforce. You know, wherever they were when they first saw that movie, now they're kind of adults. Why not have an adult fear of, now this is affecting my child? What does it mean to lose a spouse? You know, these are fears that you have as an adult.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's absolutely, you know, a whole different level of fear.
It's actually, I thought of along those same lines, the new Grudge, which also has, I forgot Lynn Shay was in New Nightmare. She's one of the nurses.
Yeah.
Because that also had that same thing where it was like, okay, this movie, you know, the Sarah Michelle Gellar Grudge came out when I was 24. Now I'm almost 40. And this movie feels like something aimed at 40-year-olds as opposed to the 24-year-olds now, you know, or younger even. Of course, now it means the reviews are terrible because everybody's bored because they don't go to a Grudge movie for adult themes and whatnot. But, you know, it's always an interesting approach to take for a sequel, which this isn't technically, but for lack of sake of argument, is, you
it's
know,
at least a
who are you aiming
at?
Are you aiming at the people, the age group that made the other ones a hit? Or are you aiming at those people again, you know? Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because this is a film that stands on its own. It is not Part 7. It's a different universe. It's you know, it's closer to Halloween 3 than, you know, anything else. It does not require any pre-knowledge of the Nightmare on Elm Street series. In fact, it might even work better the less you know about them because those expectations wouldn't be there. You wouldn't think, oh, this doesn't have as many kills as the others if it's the first one you've seen, you know. Obviously some of the little references and jokes screw your pass and the babysitter being killed the same way that Tina was and stuff, you know, that would obviously fly over your head. But I would be curious to talk to somebody who saw this one first, you know, with only a basic kind of general awareness of the other films.
I'd be interested to see in how they viewed it without those references to anchor them, whether or not they latched on to the very idea of it without knowing who all these people are in relation to one another.
Because it's not a fan servicey movie, you know. It's not like they are doing callbacks, and you know, I mean, even when they do, they don't. I mean, they have. I can't pronounce his name. Jesus Garcia at the funeral, but he doesn't even get a line of dialogue, you know. No. And
he's not even sweaty.
He's just there. It's just like, so if you haven't seen the movie, you're just like, all right, there's a close up of this random guy. It must be one of her friends. Okay, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like the movie stops cold to have him wave and take his little victory lap of coming back. You know.
You mentioned Lynn Shay playing the nurse. One thing I thought was an amusing aspect of this was how, you know, all of the medical staff cannot wait for the opportunity to drug this child. They are like gleeful at the idea. I mean, she's shaking this pill cup at him like it's filled with Pez.
We gotta get this kid drugged and fast.
I do love the line though from the babysitter. She's like, I know it's in that one. Do you have any idea what's in this one? It's like, yeah.
Yeah, she's like, the one nurse is already like tricking him and you know injecting him, and then kind of like gets this like little smug, triumphant smile.
And they're kind of terrible at their job too, because Heather shows up and she's like, "How's Dylan?" She's like, "All right, he's in a coma, but like, did call her?"
Get a little episode. Now, you know, my child is grown, but I mean, but you guys kids are still young. I mean, can you imagine walking into the hospital and then they tell you, oh, by the way, he had an episode earlier. He's fine. He's just under an oxygen tent.
No, it's cool. Everything's fine. We drugged him to the point in which he's unconscious. You know.
We don't want you to worry.
He's sleepwalking.
You look so tired.
And also they leave, like, they're witnessing this lady being butchered, and two nurses and three and an orderly or whatever. Yeah, there's one guy, two women. they all just run away. None of them like grab the kid out of there. You know, it's
no,
sorry,
they're like, I'm
sorry,
not fucking
kid.
with
We've
that
all
invisible
probably
man.
drugged
Get
at
out of
this
here.
point. You have to fend for yourself.
Listen, I'm not paid enough to take on invisible men. Is that happening psychically? I don't know. I don't want to get involved. My name's Paul. This is between y'all.
And also,
love,
at least one of those people I've seen Nightmare on Elm Street, none of them were like, oh, wow, that's the same thing that happened to that teen chick and that lady from that.
This is odd. This is an odd, occurrence here. Now it sort of overlaps. It's sort of meta. Anyone? Oh, everyone ran away? Okay. Maybe I should run away too. I also love how nurses get punched. Women be punching women in this movie, and I kind of like it. The same woman gets knocked out by the nanny, and then Heather elbows the fuck out of her, and I love that part.
Now that is what Wes was warming up for Scream, because that has the classic. I'll send you a copy.
Some real lady on lady violence is what we're looking for in the Wes Craven milieu.
And the head nurse. It's probably the only real joke in the whole movie, and no one gets it. She's named after the guy that was running the MPAA, Hefner. Mm-hmm. Wes, certainly had his problems with the MPAA over the years, so he named the evil, well, not evil, but very, very what's the word? Kind of a bitch, nurse.
She's very judgmental about what Heather does for a living.
Because the first thing she does is like, oh, you're the lady from that horror movie. You show your kid this stuff, this vile nonsense. Like, all right, this is Wes having a little fun at that guy's expense.
But I also feel like he's displaying something that he's run across. Like, even like I met, weirdly enough, when my kid was going to preschool, one of his children had a kid who was also going to a neighboring preschool, and the two preschools would do things together. They were both co-ops. So I met him, and people would ask him about his dad through almost leaning back, like the Wes Craven in him was catching. It's such an odd thing. I don't think we view it as much amongst the sort of, the horrorati of Los Angeles, but to the outsiders, to people who only tangentially meet these people on occasion, when they hear that you're into horror movies, there's that sort of, oh, why would you ever? And that's something he kind of projects here. Like, this follows Heather. Like, she's not free of it. It may have gotten her a house. It may have gotten her TV gigs. It may have gotten her a somewhat easy living life, at least from the outside. But when she walks into a hospital and she just wants to know if her kid is okay, there's a doctor judging the fuck out of how she makes a living because of it. And that's very much baked into this cake.
That's an interesting. I didn't catch that, but I don't work in the entertainment industry, so I might not have. But that's another layer. I like that.
This movie is layers on layers, man. It just is.
And not in a Shrek way where it's an onion, and the more you peel, the more it stinks.
It isn't like Shrek. And that is important to know.
Put that on the pull quote for the
put it on the 4K Blu-ray box.
Yes, it isn't like Shrek. Gina Radcliffe. Oh my God.
It ain't no Shrek. It's Gina Radcliffe of the spool. Very, very true. I would be remiss if we didn't at least bring up what happens in the third act. It's the fact that it starts in a dream, which is on the movie set in which the third act takes place in, it's all this circular logic of it that I find utterly fascinating. And yet they even take time to have Freddy do a very typical Freddy, you pick out one of these eels, bitch.
And she jams a snake in his eye.
She jams an eel in the motherfucker's eye. That is fantastic. And the fact that Freddy gets stabbed in the dick. I had forgotten that Freddy got stabbed in the dick.
And he also gets that tongue splitting thing that the goth kids do.
Yeah, it's very, very true. It's way ahead of its time. I just forgotten that the culmination of all of this is, it's like Die Hard. Stab Freddy in the dick, shove him in an oven, and run, because this entire hell dimension is going to blow up. And then it does. And then they just poltergeist out of it into her kitchen, into her very shabby chic kitchen, and they start reading a script. It's wild. I dig this movie. Anything that we missed that you want to talk about? We've reached that stage.
I don't think so. I mean, I consider it, again, it's not really a sequel. One thing I do love about the way that it's presented is that, the full title truly is Wes Craven's New Nightmare. It's not like the John Carpenter's Halloween, whatever. The Wes Craven part of it is given the same weight of font, in the title. It's all one line, a straight line across. Wes Craven. When Wes talked about it, he didn't call it New Nightmare. He called it Wes Craven's New Nightmare. It is very much part of the title, which I thought was always very interesting, because inevitably, and I myself have done this, you refer, it's the 7th Nightmare on Elm Street movie. Freddy versus Jason was the 8th Nightmare on Elm Street movie. It's not really, it's just, what else are you going to call it, So because of that, and we do these ranks, I always put it just, 3 and 1 of my favorites, and then this one's next. And part of that is, I might have mentioned this when we did Jason Goes to Hell. I was always more of a Jason and Michael guy than Freddy. I never got into Freddy as much as the other two. So I think I tend to like the ones more like this, and also, Freddy's Revenge, where it's going outside the box. Yeah. As opposed to, Dream Master, which is probably certainly most successful of the original series. And it remains a featuring another Invisible Man just fight. Kind of boring, It's because it's exactly what you think a Freddy movie is. It's got probably the most kills, or at least tied for the most kills. It's very slick. It's got all the one-liners. It's got the imaginative dream sequences. It's not a bad movie at all, but it just doesn't interest me, because it's just MTV. Freddy as the rock god, is the peak of that kind of thing. And I liked that this one had ideas, it wasn't, Wes Craven didn't come back because, I have a cool idea for a kill, or, I thought of some great Freddy quips. I'd like to be the one to write and direct them myself. He had ideas, and he was using the mythology of Freddy to get them across, which I thought was a fascinating approach for any franchise movie, let alone one that had supposedly ended, and there were certainly going to be fans who were, yes, he's not really dead. Like, no, he is. It's not the same thing. I sometimes wonder if Freddy should not have been played by Robert Englund. I wonder if the idea might have come across better, because they changed the makeup a lot. In fact,
they changed the makeup, but he looked bigger. Like, if you had told me that wasn't Robert Englund doing the actual physical work, I would have believed you, because he looked like just beefier.
Yeah, well, they the makeup always kind of changed a little bit from movie to movie depending on who was doing it. But this is the first time I felt like they were specifically going for a completely different look, as opposed to, I'm gonna put my own touches on this basic design.
Yes.
And, I mean, the color, his hat is even a different color, and he's got the trench coat, and the glove looks different. I mean? So I can't help but wonder if maybe because it's about the idea of Freddy, that if they should have modified it more, even to the extent where it was a different actor playing him, that might have worked a little better, because then you can't do a trailer where Robert Englund and Freddy make up saying "Miss Me," because that is, yeah, we did, and we're here for Elm Street 7, and we're getting New Nightmare instead. I can see why people might have gotten kind of annoyed by that, that he was not playing the Dream Stalker from Springwood. There was this entity, whatever. Did he give the entity a name? I forget.
No, he just says there are evils.
Yeah, it's just an evil entity
that could be captured. And now they're not making the movie.
And again, that's kind of a weighty, brainy concept. And I'm not even sure if I fully understood it at 14 when I saw it originally. I'm sure there are others, maybe even younger than me, who are, just as lost, and even older than me, that were just as lost by that idea. On the surface, it just seems like Freddy Krueger, the guy that killed Nancy, and the guy that killed Kristen, and the guy that killed Joey, all these characters, is breaking through into the real world. But it's not. It's this entity using the idea of Freddy.
Yeah. And I get why it threw people off, but I also feel like it's so much more adventurous and interesting.
Oh, yeah.
What's being brought across here, it is the adult Nightmare in Elm Street, where instead of adults being the idiots, the patsies, the people who refuse to believe and acknowledge that anything wrong is happening, it's the adults who are getting it. And because they also have the sin of participating in the Nightmare on Elm Street series. And it's like Wes Craven is exercising the entire endeavor out, and New Line paid for it. And thank God they did, because this is a damn good movie. More people should see it.
I would say that it's the only one besides the first two that I thought was genuinely creepy. Now, there were a couple moments where I was like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna pretend I didn't see that scene. Like when Miko Hughes, Freddy is speaking through him, and the kid dead ass sounded like Donald Duck, and it's hilarious. and I realize it's a little kid, he's trying to do some sort of red room thing, and then that's fine. It just, I thought that maybe they should have done a little, little fixing and post of his vocal effect in that scene, but the scene in the hospital where Freddy is kind of rising behind the babysitter, that's really well done. And you're kind of getting it from Dylan was the kid's name. You're kind of getting from his perspective, so he looks like he's about 12 feet tall, and he's just kind of slowly looming up behind her. And I was like, that's really creepy. That's very well done.
It's the first, it has to earn points because it is the first time that Freddy's been genuinely menacing.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of a game show host who happens to kill people to cheer them up, like we saw in 4 and 5, where he's feel-good Freddy. There's no feel-good Freddy in this. He's
he at one point he sticks out his tongue and kind of like wraps it around her. And I was like, okay, I'm waiting for the inevitable, give me a kiss, baby, or something like this, some sort of wisecrack, and he doesn't. It's still kind of funny because it's just a somewhat ridiculous effect, and he's all like, as somebody actually would be if their tongue suddenly came out really long, like a Sylvester the Cat effect, and started wrapping around somebody. But the wisecracks are at a minimum. And I appreciate that, because goddamn, by Freddy's dead, I just wanted so much for him to just shut up for a couple of minutes.
Well, yeah, and nothing, it doesn't get dated because of that. It's not.
He wasn't doing like a lot of pop culture for the time references. We didn't have Zsa Zsa Gabor showing up or Roseanne and Tom. It's you could watch.
And he doesn't change costume. I mean, that was one thing that Freddy's dead. I mean, the first time we see him, he's dressed as the Wicked Witch, and it's like, what the fuck is this?
You can watch this and not think other than the state of phone technology. Oh God, it's the 90s.
Yeah,
they're not running on fumes.
No.
The tank is full of ideas in this, and it shows. It feels like there are real stakes. It feels like there are real emotions. It feels like there's real ideas. And, yes, of course, effects don't age well. Some of the model work is a bit iffy. Some of the fire effects are a little, but you kind of forget all that because it's really swinging for the fences. When it comes down to Wes Craven's new nightmare, try some, won't you? Please, for the love of God. Watch this fucking movie.
Just a little bit as a treat.
It's good stuff. So before we go, let's do some quick plugs. Mr. Collins, where can people read and hear more from you?
Yeah, at Birth Movies Death. I still do my weekly column, Colin's Crypt, and I still update horror movie a day when I can. And and if you're in LA, you can get the sheer joy. You can talk all about it of me hosting a screening. I know that enhances a viewing experience when I come out and babble for 5 minutes before it starts. When you just want to watch the movie,
I enjoy your babbling. I think you're a great babbler.
I'm doing Motel Hell at the end of the month.
Yes.
40th anniversary of Motel Hell.
I'm going to buy some tickets and fly out there. That is a personal favorite.
A little more up your alley for the podcast folk. I've asked, and they seemed open to doing, because this year is the 40th anniversary of Friday the 13th and the 35th anniversary of New Beginning. And I thought, since those are the two not Jason ones, I thought it'd be fun to do a double feature of those at some point this year for Screamfest. So hopefully that'll come together, because I think that'd be a fun double feature. Probably never been paired together before.
And never will they be since.
Well, I mean, I've said this numerous times. I'll say it every day if I have to. If you dislike New Beginning, do not make up your mind until you've seen it with a crowd. Because that is it's a completely different experience. And I've talked to people who have gone in being like, I'm doing this because it's a Friday movie on the big screen, and walked away like, oh, I get it now. So
I said the same thing. I said the same thing about Cats. See it with a crowd. It's a whole other level of experience.
Brian, I'll take your challenge. When New Beginning screens, I will show up, and hopefully it is the same type of experience that I had with 3. Whereas I didn't hate 3. I just didn't.
3 also definitely comes to life better on the
verisimilitude of it.
If it's in 3D.
Yeah. And the person behind me had never seen it before. And I suddenly started to watch it through her eyes and her reactions. And the joy of that third act, which people don't really focus on that third act. That third act's a hell of a fucking movie. Like, just that movie alone is fantastic. So when New Beginning screens, I will show up and I will try to restrain my impulse to yell at the screen, those 2 guys want to fuck Jason Voorhees' corpse. And I will enjoy with the crowd that sequence in which we watch a van drive across the screen 4 times. 4. Hopefully that plays really well with the crowd, as it does in my mind. The best part of Friday the 13th, A New Beginning. And Gina, where can people find you on these here internets?
I am a writer for The Spool. That is thespool.net. I write about TV and do some, write about movies, and I do some TV recaps. My most recent review is of the Netflix take on Dracula. The first hour and a half, which I really genuinely loved, and the rest of it, and I will also be starting to recap HBO's The Outsider, based on the Stephen King novel. So that is the spool.net. And I have my own website in which I write about movies and old TV and pop culture at GinaRadcliffe.com. And I am on Twitter under Porcelain72.
Do it today. People will check it out. Of course, you can find us on Twitter at KillByKillPod, Instagram, KillByKillPodcast, the Facebook group and page. If you want to talk about the movies in more detail, and we, of course, encourage you to do so, please rate and review us on iTunes or anywhere that you get podcasts. If it has an independent review, please do us a favor. Do us a solid. Tell people you like the show. Even if you just kind of like it. Tell people you love it. It would help us greatly. And, of course, you could always, flip us some spare coin if you got it at the old Patreon. We're doing fun things over there. What's happening on the Patreon front, Gina?
We have a new patron. It is Stephen Gavis. Thank you so much, Stephen. We will also be selecting our bi-monthly winner, who, for anyone at the $10 level, they have the opportunity to choose a movie for us to watch and review. So that'll be our next Patreon episode for probably about 2 weeks from now. We try to space them out so that they're between episodes of this. We're also talking about doing at least 1 or 2 commentary tracks. We just have to find the time to do so and figure out what we're going to cover. So that's probably going to be something that somewhere down the line, probably closer to spring or summer, but we're pretty excited about that.
Yes, and coming up this Valentine's Day, of course, Kill by Kill, the Silk Stockings unit.
After dark.
Will be put into motion. We've already picked the episode of Silk Stockings that we will be talking about. This is a really weird time at Kill by Kill time, but
a really awesome time.
And really awesome time because the next movie after New Nightmare, we're continuing the great movie train here. Before we get to the hellacious Nightmare on Elm Street remake, we're going to talk about Cobra. Sylvester Stallone's Cobra.
I'm just going to ease into it. We just need something. We need something a little comforting.
Listen, we need some robot fashion shoots. We need some axe gangs.
We need some pizza scissors.
Pizza scissors. We need to see leveler mics exposed just when you rip someone's shirt open and you don't do a take 2. All of it. We're going to talk about it all with Cobra. Some great guests coming up. So thank you so much. And that does it for this episode. So for myself and for Brian and for Gina, bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.